I still don't know why that sound comes back to me sometimes. Right before sleep, right before dreams take over. A low, distant hum, like something electrical breathing in the dark. I've never heard it anywhere else. Only once. And I pray I never hear it again. By the time I reached the Appalachian Highway, I was running on fumes, mentally and physically. The road stretched forward like a black ribbon swallowed by forest, my headlights carving out narrow tunnels between trees that felt far too close. No cars, no houses, just mountains and endless woods pressing in from both sides. My eyelids grew heavier with every mile, the kind of heaviness that makes you lose seconds at a time. At one point, I jolted awake, hands tightening on the wheel, unsure how long I'd been drifting. That's when the neon sign appeared. It flickered into view without warning, glowing pale blue through the trees. Motel. One word, no name. It stood absurdly close to the road, as if the highway had been built around it, not the other way around. The building itself sat low and wide, a single-story structure half swallowed by darkness, backed directly by the dense Appalachian forest. No lights in the windows, no other vehicles, nothing to suggest anyone else had stopped here tonight. I told myself I didn't have a choice. I pulled into the gravel lot and shut off the engine. The silence hit immediately, thick, unnatural. Even the forest seemed to hold its breath. Inside, the lobby smelled faintly of dust and old carpet. I rang the bell on the counter. Once, twice. After a moment, a man emerged from a back room, rubbing his eyes like I dragged him out of a dream. He looked ordinary enough, middle-aged, tired, dressed in a wrinkled shirt. Nothing about him felt threatening. If anything, he seemed relieved to see me. "Late night," he said, voice slow, flat. "Yeah," I replied. "Just need a room." He slid a key across the counter without another word. A small metal tag read 103. Our eyes met briefly. His gaze lingered a second longer than necessary, but I brushed it off as exhaustion. The room was exactly what I expected. A bed, a nightstand, curtains pulled tight over a window facing the woods. I didn't unpack, didn't shower. I kicked off my shoes and collapsed onto the mattress, fully dressed. As soon as my head hit the pillow, the weight of sleep dragged me under. The last thing I remember wasn't a thought. It was the feeling of falling and the certainty that I wouldn't wake up the same way I fell asleep. I woke up to a sound that didn't belong in a motel room. It was low and uneven, not loud enough to identify, but present enough to force my eyes open. For a few seconds, I didn't know where I was. The ceiling above me was unfamiliar, too low, stained by shadows that shifted as my vision adjusted. My body felt heavy, unresponsive, like I'd been dragged out of something deep and thick. Then memory snapped back into place. The highway, the neon sign, room 103. The room was dark, darker than it should have been. No light from the hallway, no glow from outside. The curtains were still drawn tight, sealing the forest away. I lay there, listening, trying to locate the source of the sound. It reminded me of distant electricity, the hum you hear standing near a transformer, except slower, almost deliberate. That's when I noticed the corner. At first, I told myself it was just a shadow, the kind your brain invents when you wake up too fast. A darker patch where the walls met, nothing more. I stared at it, waiting for it to dissolve into normal shapes. It didn't. The darkness in the corner had depth, structure. A vertical outline that didn't match the geometry of the room. Slowly, painfully slowly, I realized I was looking at a silhouette. Human in proportion, but wrong in detail. The head was elongated, stretching upward at an unnatural angle. The arms hung too low, extending far past where hands should rest, nearly reaching the knees. It wasn't moving. I tried to scream. My mouth opened, my chest tightened, but the sound that came out was weak, swallowed by the room. The figure didn't react. It didn't turn. It didn't acknowledge me at all. That was worse than if it had. The idea that it was there for reasons completely unrelated to my presence made my stomach twist. The hum grew stronger. My fingers trembled as I slid my hand across the mattress, searching blindly for the lamp on the nightstand. I didn't know what I planned to do with it. Turn it on, throw it, use it as a weapon, but it was the only solid thing I could think of. My hand brushed the base of the lamp, cold and real. That's when the eyes opened. 2 points of light ignited within the silhouette. Pure white, too bright to be natural. They didn't reflect light. They produced it. The hum surged, vibrating through the walls, through the bed frame, through my bones. The room began to glow, shadows peeling back as the brightness intensified. I squeezed my eyes shut as the light overwhelmed everything. The sound peaked. And then collapsed into silence. I jolted upright in bed, gasping for air. Sunlight poured through the window, forcing its way around the edges of the curtains. Morning. Birds somewhere outside. My heart hammered as if I'd been running. It took several seconds to convince myself to look. The corner was empty. No silhouette, no light, no sound, just a vacant stretch of wall. I sat there, breathing hard, telling myself the only explanation that made sense. It had been a dream. But even as I said it, I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever had stood in that corner hadn't vanished. It had simply finished. I didn't move for a long time. Morning light pressed against the curtains, turning the fabric a dull gray, but I stayed seated on the edge of the bed, listening to my own breathing. My shirt clung to my back, damp with sweat. Every instinct told me to stand up, to leave, yet I kept staring at the corner, where the silhouette had been, half expecting the darkness there to thicken again, to take shape. Nothing happened. Slowly, carefully, I forced myself to check the room. The walls were bare. The floor was empty. No scorch marks, no smell of ozone, no trace that anything unusual had ever been there. The lamp sat untouched on the nightstand. When I finally pulled the curtains aside, the forest outside looked harmless in daylight. Green, still, ordinary. That was when the doubt set in. I replayed the night in my head, searching for cracks. I had been exhausted. I had nearly fallen asleep at the wheel. The sound, the light, the figure. Every detail could be explained if I tried hard enough. A vivid dream. Sleep paralysis. My mind filling in gaps. The explanations stacked neatly, comforting in their logic. And yet my hands were still shaking. I didn't shower. I didn't change clothes. I shoved my shoes on and grabbed my keys. My movements rushed and clumsy, as if the room might lose patience with me. Before leaving, I looked back one last time at the corner. Empty. Just paint and shadow. I closed the door behind me and walked straight to the lobby. The man was already there, standing behind the counter as if he'd been waiting. Fully awake now, alert. His eyes went to my face, lingering the way they had the night before. "Everything all right?" he asked. The words felt heavier than they should have. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. A dozen explanations fought to get out, none of them believable. I placed the key on the counter instead. "I'm in a hurry," I said. "Didn't sleep well." He nodded slowly, like that was an answer he'd heard many times before. No surprise, no concern, just acceptance. As I turned toward the door, his voice followed me. "We'll miss you," he said. I stopped. For a fraction of a second, I considered asking him what he meant, considered turning around, meeting his eyes, forcing clarity into the moment. Instead, I kept my back to him. "See you again, Ethan." The words were calm, casual, spoken with the certainty of a statement, not the hope of one. I didn't respond. Outside, the air felt colder than it should have. I got into my car, locked the doors, and drove off without looking in the rearview mirror. The motel disappeared quickly, swallowed by the curve of the road and the trees beyond it. Only when it was gone did I realize something that made my grip tighten on the steering wheel. I couldn't remember telling him my name, and yet, Long after the motel vanished from sight, that low, distant hum followed me down the highway, quiet enough to deny, persistent enough to remember, like something patient, waiting for the moment I'd finally need to stop again.